Tēnā koutou katoa. Fresh haircut this week. Lost a lot of the blonde, sadly, not all of the greys. Kicked off the most recent 4-week Imposter Syndrome online course this week. Had our first session on Monday, and a question came up that I want to talk about, and that is a lot of the people admitted that when they tell people they're coming to a course about overcoming imposter syndrome, they get the response, "Really? You? But you're so good at what you do." And this is the thing with imposter syndrome. It is the domain of high achievers. But what that also means is it is the domain of those who work hard. It's also exacerbated by us feeling like we have to work harder, and it's never enough. So that's what I want to explore briefly in this live, because it's the why behind so much of our burnout. You know, we talk about burnout being quite prevalent these days. In fact, the Sunday show last weekend featured burnout. It's well worth a watch. And yet we don't often look at the reasons why we're burning out. We look at the symptoms and how to recover, but what leads us to overwork and burnout in the first place? Now, the thing is, we know that imposter syndrome is the domain of high achievers, but when we're having an imposter experience, we can't see what we're achieving. Everybody else thinks we're high achievers, but we can't recognize it. And so this is this fear of being found out. This is what often drives us to work twice as hard to prove ourselves. It's what drives us to get everything perfect if we can. It's what drives us to not say no or ask for help because we're worried it'll be seen as a sign of weakness. And of course, all these things are a perfect recipe for burnout. So quite often it's our self-doubt that's driving us to prove ourselves. It's our fear of being found out that's driving us to overwork, to prove that we can, to not say no, to not delegate, to not ask for help and support. And so it's these behaviours and these beliefs that we have around our imposter syndrome that actually leads to us burning out a lot of the time. And of course, add to this, if we're high achievers, the chances are we are going to be involved in more projects, given more promotions and given more work because of our capability. It's a perfect recipe for overwork and for burnout. And we know as well with imposter syndrome that we put a lot of success down to things that are not ourselves. We'll say it was the work of the team, it was luck, it was just a mistake, it's nothing really, anyone could have done it. And this in itself also leads us to keep pushing, to keep proving ourselves, to keep feeling like we have to work twice as hard so that we don't get found out. And of course, that is where burnout comes from. So if any of that resonates for you, or if you're feeling a little bit exhausted, on the edge of burnout, overworking at the moment, have a look at the reasons why. Do you have this fear of being found out? Are you trying to prove yourself? And often, of course, the irony with this is the only person we need to prove it to is ourselves. It's this lens that we look through. Everybody else sees the reality of our performance and our achievements. What we see is through this lens of our imposter experience, through this lens of self-doubt. And of course, that leaves us feeling like we have to try harder, we have to do more, we have to work harder, and that leads to burnout. So I wanted to touch on that because it is such a prevalent topic, and it came up this week on our course. I've got a couple of workshops coming up next month as well, so if that did resonate, I'm live in both Auckland and Wellington. Check out the events page of the website or Facebook to find those events and get your spot, because there are early birds running, and that's a chance to work with me live in a small group across a day to really delve deeply into some of this stuff and help us not just overcome our imposter syndrome, but retrain our brains and have a more positive mindset that builds confidence and resilience. So, imposter syndrome, often the reason behind burnout. It's a blog that I wrote this week about the same topic. I'll pop the link in the live. Hopefully that's given you some food for thought as you head into your weekend. Whatever you're doing, enjoy it. Ka kite ana.